last but not least here, Wes, any other conference tournament futures bet that piques your interest before we get out of here?
Yeah, there's a couple. I'll give a shorter one and a longer one. The MAC tournament in Cleveland, not the MAC, but the MAC, the Mid-American Conference. Akron at 5-1, I thought was kind of interesting because they're probably going to get Kent State if the seeds hold that 3-2. We know the rivalry between those two teams. And Akron, even though they were down most of the game, took Kent State to overtime. They split the season series this year. So there's a lot of heat there. Toledo is kind of one of those teams, they play that tempo, but that sometimes gets them upset in these tournaments. So Akron, I thought was interesting as the 3 at like 5-1, and that might be where I try to get in on them. Pac-12, if you're looking at a long shot, I know it's becoming popular. Washington State at 20-1. They have won 6 in a row down the stretch now. None of them were against UCLA or Arizona, it's probably slated that they're going to be there, but Washington State might give you a little bit of an opportunity to have somebody down the board a little live. Utah, I kind of wanted to look at, but I don't think that they're going to be healthy enough. So those are ones that I will have. I will be betting maybe a couple more throughout the week. You don't want to go crazy with some of these because of the hold and because sometimes it's more really, I think, better long-term to play like a money line rollover, even though most bettors don't necessarily bet like that. So keep that in mind when you hear that ad nauseum on the Twitter machine and all over social media this week. And then in the Big West out here in Henderson, Hawaii, 8-1, best defense in the conference, and they have got a lot of size. I think UCSB is the best team. They're the 2 seed. Irvine is the 1 seed. So Hawaii is in that 4-5 game with Cal State Fullerton. They beat Fullerton. I think they're primed to upset Irvine, and their defense has been excellent. So I would anticipate a Hawaii-Santa Barbara matchup in the final.
Good stuff there. And you mentioned Wazoo in the Pac-12 really quickly on them before I give out my other conference tournament futures bet. From a conference rating perspective overall, I didn't want to spend too much time on the Pac-12 because the Jalen Clark injury is certainly going to wrap its head around this conference tournament. UCLA still awaiting MRI results on that as of this recording on Monday afternoon. But you brought up the Cougs. Kyle Smith, former USF coach, San Francisco coach in the WCC. Very similar mold to West Virginia in a sense. In terms of the pricing, I think the best number you can get on Wazoo is 22-1, but slow tempo, which again leads to high variance if you're looking at a bigger number. 10th highest 3-point scoring rate across Division I, and they're hot going into the tournament too. Winners of 6 straight games and fighting for an NCAA tournament berth, obviously. So motivation comes into play. But looking at the other futures bet I have besides West Virginia, New Mexico at plus 1,400, would bet them down to plus 1,200, got them over at that price, 14-1 at Caesars Sportsbook on Monday morning. And the big thing for me here is the New Mexico Lobos wouldn't face San Diego State up until the conference tournament championship game. And again, everyone has their perception of revenge and situational spots, but the fact that the Aztecs got away with that game at the pit going back to a couple weeks ago when Lamont Butler hit the 3 will definitely be in the minds of a very aggressive up-tempo New Mexico team. And the other thing with the number 2 is the reason why I like it, even though the profile is a bit different than some of these other teams that I've bet so far. They've lost 8 of their last 11 games, so they don't have a lot of momentum heading in, but that's baked into the number, and that's why you're getting a better price on this team. They didn't have Jalen House as well for 2 of those losses. So I mentioned they play up tempo, the 23rd ranked adjusted tempo in college basketball. They rely on isolation maybe a little too much, which makes their half-court offense a bit untrustworthy, and mid-range as well, kind of similar to Indiana, not necessarily a darling of the advanced metrics sites, but couple that with being bottom 15 in 3-point attempt rate nationally. But I make their implied probability a little bit higher than what we see at the price tag of 12-1, or I think as low as 10-1 in the market. So very experienced, very cohesive group with House. I mentioned Jamal Mashburn, their leading scorer, and Morris Udeze, the Wichita State transfer, one of the best rebounders at both ends in college basketball, which allows them to play at that up-tempo pace. So very high on the Lobos, like that price. I have West Virginia and New Mexico. Wes, if you want to wrap up your conference tournament futures. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna bet Akron at 5-1 for the MAC. Also Hawaii at 8-1. Looking at the Big Ten, I may take a shot with Penn State. Down the board, I'll probably have a little bit of Indiana. Usually with these bigger conferences, especially where you got like 14 teams, it's kind of it's okay to bet two, and you're not just limited to one. Where maybe you bet one on one side of the draw and one side of the other. You bet one shorter price, one longer price to give yourself some position, perhaps to hedge. So that is what I'm doing. I'm digging into these all week as we go along. Go South Alabama Jaguars, who I have at 10-1. Tonight in the Sun Belt. Did hedge a little off with the ULL money line, but would be nice to score one of those at least to start championship week.
Go. I'm with you, man. I'm rooting for your futures there tonight as we're recording this a bit before. So that's Wes Reynolds. You can follow him on Twitter at Wes Reynolds1, the VSiN co-host of Live Bet Tonight in Vegas, live in Vegas, airing Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 Pacific time. And remember to head over to TheLines.com. We're giving away a $25 Amazon gift card in our daily college hoops pick'em contest, especially with March Madness right around the corner. Be sure to check out TheLines.com for some big-time contests that we have, new contests before the big dance. Head over to TheLines.com to get the best of the number on any of these conference tournament futures bets, and subscribe to The Lines podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. For Wes, I'm Eli Herskovich. Thanks for watching and listening to another edition of the Outside Shots podcast.